Queensland police made a significant discovery during a recent raid, uncovering a 3D-printed firearm, a loaded handgun, and a variety of illegal drugs hidden inside a seemingly quiet suburban home. Authorities believe this was not a random incident. The residence has been linked to a new chapter of the Mongols outlaw motorcycle gang, an organization already known across Australia for its involvement in violent crime and drug trafficking. This case goes beyond a single arrest. It reflects a growing trend where modern technologies, like 3D-printed weapons, are being used alongside traditional gang operations, creating new risks for both law enforcement and the public. Over the next few minutes, this summary will walk you through the events of the raid, explain the significance of the Mongols' expansion in Queensland, and highlight why this development could be a serious warning sign for communities across the state. Who was arrested and what was found? The central figure in this investigation is Mark Andrew Hill, a 41-year-old man who police allege is a member of the Mongols outlaw motorcycle gang. He is believed to be affiliated with the newly formed Brisbane Bayside chapter, a faction reportedly expanding the Mongols' operations into new areas of Queensland. The raid took place at Hill's residence in Victoria Point, a quiet suburban neighborhood where neighbors had no idea of any criminal connections. However, inside the property, police discovered evidence that painted a very different picture. Officers recovered a loaded .22 caliber handgun, a fully assembled 3D-printed firearm, which is untraceable and illegal under Queensland law, various illicit drugs including cocaine, MDMA, cannabis, and anabolic steroids, ammunition, knuckle dusters, a flick knife, and a telescopic baton, digital scales, plastic baggies, and other drug trafficking paraphernalia, Mongols gang insignia and clothing, clearly linking the home to the outlaw group. The presence of such a wide array of drugs and weapons, along with tools typically used to package and distribute narcotics, indicates that this was more than simple possession. It was a coordinated drug supply operation backed by the threat of violence. The raid, July 8, 2025. On the morning of July 8, 2025, police executed a pre-planned raid at the Victoria Point address on Creekside Circuit. The operation was launched before dawn, with officers entering the premises quickly and efficiently to avoid alerting anyone inside. Once the property was secured, investigators began a thorough room-by-room search. Queensland law requires solid evidence before a search warrant is granted, and in this case, intelligence had pointed to the presence of firearms, drugs, and gang-related activity. Specialized forensic officers joined the operation to handle sensitive evidence, particularly the firearms, while tactical and gang task force units were on hand in case of resistance. All evidence was carefully documented, tagged, and preserved for court. Drug trafficking indicators. Along with the various drugs, police found drug scales and packaging materials, strong indicators of drug trafficking rather than personal use. Cocaine and MDMA are classified as Schedule I dangerous drugs, and the presence of steroids and cannabis further supported the theory of a multi-drug operation. These findings suggest that the Mongols Bayside chapter is involved in distributing a range of substances, aiming to dominate several areas of the illicit drug market. This level of operation implies organization, planning, and financial motivation, all hallmarks of serious criminal enterprise. Who are the Mongols? The Mongols outlaw motorcycle gang, OMCG, began in California in the late 1960s and has since become one of the most notorious biker gangs in the world. They are known for their involvement in drug trafficking, weapons offenses, and violent clashes with rival gangs and law enforcement. In Queensland, the Mongols have a long-standing rivalry with other biker gangs such as the Hells Angels and Bandidos. These conflicts have often escalated into public violence, prompting the state to introduce strict anti-gang laws aimed at dismantling such groups. The formation of the Bayside chapter signals the gang's intention to expand its footprint in the state. With each new chapter, the Mongols gain greater control over drug and weapons distribution networks. Police fear this expansion could lead to increased recruitment, more violent confrontations, and heightened risks for the public. The discovery of Mongols' colors and insignia in Hill's home further confirms this growing influence. These symbols are more than decoration. They signify rank, loyalty, and active participation in the gang's criminal operations, charges, and legal consequences. Following the raid, Mark Andrew Hill was charged with 13 offenses covering illegal possession of firearms, including a 3D-printed gun and a loaded handgun, possession of Schedule I drugs with intent to supply, possession of steroids and cannabis, possession of prohibited weapons and ammunition, gang-related offenses under Queensland anti-organized crime laws. Under Queensland law, possessing an unregistered firearm can carry up to 13 years in prison. Supplying Schedule I drugs can carry up to 25 years, depending on quantity. Possession of gang insignia, when connected to other crimes, can trigger mandatory minimum sentences. The combination of weapons, drugs, trafficking tools, and gang links is extremely serious. Queensland courts have the authority to impose consecutive sentences, meaning Hill could serve time for each offense separately, potentially adding up to decades in prison. Why this case matters. This incident is not just about one man. It points to a broader criminal network. The use of new technologies like 3D-printed weapons, combined with traditional gang violence and drug trafficking, represents a significant and evolving threat to public safety. For Queensland communities, the emergence of the Mongols Bayside chapter is a red flag. It suggests an escalation in organized crime activity that could lead to more violence, more drugs on the streets, and increased danger for both civilians and law enforcement. By acting now, authorities hope to disrupt the gang's expansion before it becomes more deeply entrenched. This case could serve as a turning point in the fight against organized crime in Queensland. In high-profile gang cases, it's common for prosecutors to lay multiple serious charges in order to send a strong message to organized crime groups. In this case, the combination of illegal firearms, drug trafficking evidence, and gang-related paraphernalia provides prosecutors with a powerful set of charges. These don't just target the individual, Mark Andrew Hill, but also aim to undermine the newly established Bayside chapter of the Mongols outlaw motorcycle gang. For Hill, the 13 charges represent far more than a personal legal battle. They are part of a broader strategy by Queensland authorities to dismantle outlaw motorcycle gangs from within and prevent their further spread into local communities. The growing threat of 3D-printed firearms. The seizure of a 3D-printed firearm during the raid highlights one of the most pressing and rapidly evolving threats facing law enforcement today. Unlike conventional firearms, which require specialized manufacturing, registration, and serial numbers, a 3D-printed gun can be made at home using an affordable printer, basic materials, and blueprints readily available online. These weapons are cheap, accessible, untraceable. For criminal networks, this is a significant advantage. These firearms can be produced in secret, bypassing licensing, background checks, and legal dealers. Once assembled, they function much like conventional handguns and pose a serious danger to both the public and police officers. Another concern is their undetectability. Made largely from plastic, 3D-printed weapons may evade traditional metal detectors and X-ray screening. This raises the risk that they could be smuggled into locations like airports, concerts, or government buildings. Even when discovered, investigators face major obstacles. With no serial numbers or manufacturing records, it becomes difficult to prove who created the weapon or when. Australian law enforcement has already seen an uptick in cases involving these weapons, especially in connection with outlaw motorcycle gangs and drug trafficking networks. In some cases, entire rooms have been converted into small-scale firearm production labs, capable of manufacturing multiple guns within days. Internationally, similar patterns are emerging in countries like the United States and the United Kingdom. The appeal of these weapons is clear. They eliminate the risk of detection and allow gangs like the Mongols to arm themselves quickly and repeatedly, even after police seizures. In the Victoria Point case, the presence of both a 3D printed gun and a loaded conventional handgun illustrates how modern criminal groups are combining new technology with traditional violent tactics. These developments are forcing law enforcement agencies worldwide to prioritize the monitoring and control of 3D printed weapons. Law enforcement and community safety, combating a criminal organization as structured and dangerous as the Mongols, requires more than routine policing. In Queensland, specialized gang task forces play a vital role in tracking the activities of outlaw motorcycle groups. These teams monitor gang movements, recruitment efforts, and the flow of illegal drugs and weapons. Their approach is highly strategic, aimed at dismantling the organization piece by piece rather than simply arresting individual members. A critical component of this strategy is community intelligence. Residents are often the first to notice suspicious activity, such as unfamiliar visitors, strange vehicles, or disturbances near known gang properties. Anonymous tip lines and public reporting often provide the initial leads that support larger investigations. In this particular case, it's likely that intelligence on the new Bayside chapter was gathered over several weeks or months, combining community reports with digital surveillance. Public raids like the one in Victoria Point serve several purposes. They disrupt gang operations. They build public confidence in law enforcement. They deter potential recruits. They send a message to rival gangs. However, such operations must balance aggressive action with legal accountability. Every warrant, arrest, and search must be legally justified to ensure that evidence stands up in court and public trust is maintained. Overstepping legal boundaries can not only undermine investigations, but also damage relationships with the community. The Victoria Point raid is an example of this balance in action. It involved collaboration between tactical units, legal teams, and community liaison officers to ensure the operation was both effective and lawful. It demonstrates how precision policing, informed by solid intelligence, can lead to meaningful progress in public safety. Queensland's gang problem, a broader picture. The Victoria Point raid is part of a much larger trend across Queensland. Over the past decade, outlaw motorcycle gangs have steadily increased their presence. Groups such as the Bandidos, Rebels, and Hells Angels are in constant competition for control over drug supply routes, territory, and recruitment. These rivalries frequently erupt into public violence. Drive-by shootings, arson attacks, and dangerous police pursuits are not uncommon. These incidents endanger civilians and strain law enforcement resources. In recent years, gangs have adapted by incorporating new technology into their operations. Where once they relied on clubhouses and visible insignia, many now use encrypted messaging apps, anonymous online payments, and 3D printing to avoid detection. This shift has required police to evolve as well. Both state and federal agencies have developed new legal frameworks, tougher sentencing options, and enhanced surveillance tools to stay ahead. In Queensland, anti-gang laws now allow prosecutors to directly link criminal activity to gang affiliation, leading to stiffer penalties and fewer legal loopholes. Federal bodies are also playing a greater role. sharing intelligence across state lines and coordinating with international agencies when drugs or firearms are imported from overseas. The raid on the Bayside chapter of the Mongols is not an isolated event. It's part of a larger, coordinated strategy to push back against increasingly sophisticated and dangerous criminal groups. The legal proceedings ahead. Following his arrest, Mark Andrew Hill appeared in Cleveland Magistrates Court on July 9, 2025, where he was remanded in custody pending trial. His next scheduled court appearance is August 7, 2025. At that hearing, prosecutors will present further evidence and the court will determine the next legal steps. Hill's remand status reflects the seriousness of the charges. Courts typically deny bail when a defendant is deemed a flight risk, linked to organized crime, considered likely to intimidate witnesses or tamper with evidence. In this case, prosecutors must prove 1. That the 3D printed and conventional firearms were functional and illegal. 2. That the drugs were intended for distribution, supported by evidence like scales, baggies, and the variety of substances. 3. That Hill was an active member of the Mongols, and that the criminal activities were carried out on behalf of or in association with the gang. Hill's defense may argue that he was unaware of the weapons or drugs, or that others in the household were responsible. They may also challenge the legality of the search warrant or suggest that some items belong to other individuals. Conclusion: a snapshot of evolving organized crime. This case is about far more than one individual. It offers a window into how organized crime is changing, adopting new technologies, spreading into new regions, and constantly testing the limits of the law. The Mongols' expansion into Queensland's Bayside area is part of a wider trend involving smarter, more violent, and more technologically equipped gangs. But the arrest of Mark Andrew Hill shows that authorities are adapting too, using intelligence-led strategies, new laws, and community collaboration to meet these evolving threats. This operation sends a clear message. While criminal networks may grow more sophisticated, law enforcement remains committed to staying one step ahead, protecting communities and holding organized crime accountable.